Summit Point has become a haven for club racers on the East Coast. But the sprawling facility started with one simple racetrack. And that's what we're facing off on today as we get ready to watch the PCA Sim Racing Series 12 Pro Class. And you'll see it all live here on RaceSpotTV. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Ewan O'Leary. Behind the scenes is our director, Ramiro Cisneros. And Ewan, like I said, this place has kind of been here since the start of this facility, but it's also been here since the start of iRacing.
Yeah, one of the few circuits that we're going to this season that has, and looking forward to seeing how it races. You don't often see cars of this speed racing around here. Of course, there's very little recent real-life precedent as well for this kind of racing too. So there's a little bit of unexpectedness here, a little bit of apprehensiveness, I'd imagine, from the drivers as they wonder how to tackle this 2-mile circuit. Maybe not in terms of how they're going to drive around here on their own. Plenty of these drivers will have plenty of experience. However, it's about how it races and how you can get around here in a Porsche Cup car.
Exactly, and this is, of course, a few rounds into the season as well. So let's take a look at the standings. Christopher Pies currently is at the top of our points. We've got Thomas Briggs sitting in P2, followed by Logan Grotto and Mark Nister in 4th. It's relatively close since it's still a little bit earlier on, and they have some drop weeks to help them out in this one. So keep an eye on this space. It will start to separate as this goes on. But another thing that we want to mention here is, of course, we're excited to announce that Charlie Mobile is sponsoring the Series 12 Clean Driver Award and Event 4 broadcast here on RaceSpotTV. Also, Charlie Mobile is providing an Apple iPhone 16 and a year of service to the combined classes overall winners. So some really cool stuff up for grabs for the drivers in this series. And keeping it clean, probably going to be a little bit more difficult, I imagine, at this track just because of the cramped spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. It is going to be key, of course, for this award, but it is going to be difficult. There's no runoff around here, and that means it's going to be very, very difficult to stay on the circuit, stay off of those off tracks, and that's going to be a key throughout the rest of the season as well. We're going to Bathurst next time out, which will be a key for the Clean Drivers Award, as well as Willow Springs, where there's very little runoff, and Monza as well, where it's very easy to get into car contact rather than off tracks, although both are a problem. It's going to be an important final 4 rounds for that award, and I'm sure many of these drivers in this field will be aiming for it as well, alongside, of course, the common goal of trying to win the damn race.
Of course, which is first going to start here with qualifying, which has just a few moments left. They get 3 laps max. This time around, they could easily complete those 3 laps as they're circulating around here at about 109, 110 for the quicker drivers, 108s in practice if you're supremely fast. We'll see if anybody reaches that here in this qualifying session. And Michael Polasek is currently ahead of Leif Peterson by about a quarter of a second, which from what we've seen with the practice times here, Ewan, I get the feeling that the quarter of a second is actually a pretty big margin.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's just been eclipsed. Robbie Prescott's gone a 10th quicker than Michael Parsek at the front, so it does get a little bit closer. Yeah, what was the end count we got to at the end of practice? Was it 23 within a second? Something like that. It's remarkable around this circuit just how close it is. I mean, it's only a 2-mile circuit, so it is kind of expected. Only just over a minute in terms of lap time. We could be racking up a good 50 laps tonight. However, it's still nevertheless very impressive, and we've seen this all season long. We saw it at Barber with lots of very close times as well when we cover the beginning of this series back in the start of September. It is generally very close in this series, so it's no real surprise, and I don't think I'd be quite willing to give all the credit to the circuit for the times being quite so close.
Yeah, exactly. They do such a good job of kind of organizing people into these 5 classes that they have. There's 4 of them that are competing on our broadcast for this season, at least until we get closer to the end, where we'll likely pick up the entry class as we usually do. Ed Eisenring up here in the pro class, good enough for 15th after 2 laps, and it looks like he's parking it before he takes his 3rd lap. So I wonder if the car maybe just goes away a little bit, because he's not the first person I've seen wrap it up after that 2nd lap. As this is Chris Braun here in the number 258, just one position behind him. And coming to the end of the lap, the thing that really strikes me about this place is look at how narrow of a track this is here as these drivers come around the last half.
Yeah, that's my concern a little bit with overtaking here. I know there's a big stop on the way down towards turn 1, especially the stop at turn 5 as well might be a chance as it gets a bit slow speed. However, it is very narrow, as you say. Getting any more than 2 wide, I think, is going to be very difficult. And so that could provide a problem a little bit in the race. And I just wonder whether this qualifying session is going to set the tone for the race in that sense. I mean, these drivers will be used to it by now. All of the circuits, pretty much, maybe with the exception of Monza at the final round, all of these circuits are fairly difficult to overtake on, I would say. We saw at Barber that it was a bit follow the leader to start with, but got very interesting in the pit stop sequence and all of that. So, you know, we are still going to see an interesting race, but we could see another race where it's a bit follow the leader at the start and then the interest develops as the race gets old towards the end.
And just a little bit of an update, apologies. This is the correct points that we've got on our screen now. Polasek is currently leading. He won the first 2 races. He wasn't there for the last one. He's going to try and pick it back up. The drop weeks will help him out on that front. Or Bryce Rodriguez, on the other hand, is 2 second places, 1 at race 2, 1 at race 3. So he's kind of done similarly, but has missed the first round. Or, well, didn't miss the first round, just had his worst result in the first round. But is following relatively closely behind. Cypher's only 4 points back from him. And then look how tight it is from 4th down to 6th. Only 3 points separating all 3 drivers in that group. Just phenomenal stuff here. Even a tie down with 8th, 9th, and 10th between Nistor, Brooks, and Pies. So that is a much better look at what we've got here on the points session. So great stuff that we were able to get that updated, because up here in the pro class, that is hotly contested.
Yeah, really hotly contested. 100 points for a win these days, which means that it's a very different situation. I mean, top 15 only. It was top 16 maybe, somewhere around there. Anyway, it's a very small amount of drivers who actually scored points at all in the previous format. That meant it was actually quite difficult to score points, almost like the old Formula 1 days were back in the previous to the late 2000s, where it was very difficult to score any points at all. We sort of had the same thing going on here, but now pretty much everybody gets points. It's 100 for a win. And what that also means, Joe, it didn't quite display it on that screen there, but it also means that it's possible that any one of 16 drivers can be leading the standings by the end of today. Admittedly, a changeable amount of things would have to happen for the likes of Arthur Chan, who is 16th, for it to be on top. But anyway, that's the numbers we're looking at.
Exactly. Well, let's look at the numbers for the grid. Robbie Prescott has put it on pole, and he's looked quick in the practice too, so it's no surprise that he was able to back that up. Michael Polasek, our points leader, going to see if he can hold on to that points lead, but it'll be tough if he wants to beat Prescott to it. Derek Cypher starts from 3rd, as Joachim Baker will be in P4. Then row 3 sees Logan Grado starting in 5th and Bryce Rodriguez in the 6th position. On back to row 4, you've got Mark Nister in 7th with James Huth starting P8. Leif Peterson will be P9 and Arthur Chan in the 10th spot. Kerry Brooks will be starting from 11th today, and then his teammate Nicky Chan starts to his outside in 12th. Ewan.
Thomas Briggs is the first driver just outside half a second alongside Klaus Nielsen. It's Ed Eisenring in 15th place alongside Chris Brown, with James Franznik and Christopher Pies rounding out row 9. That's quite low down for Pies. Look for him to move through the field. Christopher Cook and Joe Sinclair round out the top 20, with Michael Patterson and Ryan Crowley sharing row 11, with Chad Henson and Nick Facciolo in 23rd and 24th.
From 25th, you've got Eric Sutton with Enrico Gregorato starting 26th. Brett Holmes in the 27th spot is followed by Matthew Jokel in 28th. Then it's Jonathan Waltman in the 29th spot and Rich Minkler in 30th. Only one more driver, Rodney Campbell, in our 31-driver field, which will be plenty to keep us busy here today, as we've been alluding to. Expect this to be quite frantic out there, especially once they start to catch that lap traffic. It'll keep everybody from the start to the back of the field very busy. Now, One thing that we want to talk about is a bit more about Charlie Mobile, because Charlie Mobile is your ticket to staying connected at full throttle. With lightning fast 5G speeds and unlimited data, talk, and text, they're the wireless service for those who live life in the fast lane. Whether you're tracking lap times or sharing your latest victory with fellow Porsche fans, Charlie Mobile has you covered with zero hidden fees or contracts. Plus, they're proud to give back, donating to causes that matter both locally and beyond. Ready to join a wireless service that goes the extra mile? Switch to Charlie Mobile and experience the difference on and off the track. So a huge thanks goes out to Charlie Mobile and all that they're doing for the series as we now switch to the cars warming up. The thing that interests me about this track is that unlike what we had at Barber, if we see this front straightaway that the drivers are coming out onto, it's not the longest straight, but it comes into a heavy braking zone, not something that we had a lot of at Barber Ewan. So I think passing opportunities will be there, but it's kind of in one place.
Yeah. However, you are visiting that place every 70 seconds, so
yes.
that does help a little bit. But yeah, I take your point. It does make it a bit predictable, and of course, with the way the final corners sort of set out, it's very easy, I think, for the driver ahead to just pull it over to the right-hand side and defend the inside line, and you are still going to need a very good run. So there is a little bit more cause for optimism there. It's almost as if Barber, instead of doing those two chicanes on the back straight, just went straight forward instead. That's kind of the similar situation we'd be looking at here into a hairpin. So maybe there is more cause to be optimistic about the overtaking chances, but we will see. I think with that just one opportunity per lap, it could be relatively easy to defend from, and we might have to see some pretty spectacular late braking if we are going to see too many overtakes in the certainly first half of this race.
Yeah, and honestly, to get there, they also have to survive that first lap. And frankly, just from my time doing races here on iRacing and then also calling plenty of them over the years, that run down into turn one as well into turn five, Ewan, I've seen so many races just come unraveled before they even get around to finish the first lap. So kind of wondering what it'll look like for a league that is pretty well known for keeping it clean on the first laps.
Yeah, it is, but anyone can get tripped up here at the first hairpin. I think the real danger is the concertina effect as you go back and back and back. The driver's in about 30th place, right at the back, going to have real trouble knowing when to slow down, because it's going to be really quite fierce for them back in the pack, I'm afraid. So we will see, but it could be tricky, yeah. And as you said earlier, with the narrowness of this circuit as well, there's very little places to go and avoid a spinning car, if there is one, other than throwing yourself off into the grass, which has its own dangers. I mean, this circuit isn't even contained by barriers all the way around. You could find yourself ramping up into some branches if you're not careful.
We've sometimes called it disappearing into the ether, unfortunately. iRacing, if you go beyond the track limits completely, you can get thrown automatically into the pit lane. So don't be too shocked if you get a driver with a horribly bad accident that sends them flying, that they might immediately disappear and then reappear back in their pit stall. So watch out for that as we see them come through the carousel there on the back half of the circuit. Yeah, and you can see this is definitely from the earlier days of iRacing. And as I alluded to, this is kind of the original track at the real facility. But now if you go here, the Jefferson circuit off to the left-hand side has additions to it. There's, I think, a circuit called the Shenandoah circuit that would be above it here, that is massive and has just gobs of corners over throughout the lap. So there's a lot that has happened since this was both built originally and since it was modeled here in iRacing in, I think it was 06, the scan was, somewhere around there.
Yeah, somewhere around there, yeah. I'm just looking at that circuit you were referencing there with a million corners, and my goodness me, it looks like a nightmare. It's very twisty. Go and look it up on Google if you haven't seen it already. It's quite remarkable. One thing I've got to ask, though, I think you know a bit more about this circuit in its present form than I will. Is it still possible to hit trees as it is in iRacing, as in real life? I presume it's not.
No.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the barriers are like these days.
I'd hope not, because if this were real life, some of these places are really, really dangerous.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I do know about this place is it's actually used for local law enforcement high performance training. So I would hope so that they would try and make it a little bit safer, so that the poor police officers that have to try and risk themselves to go and learn how to drive a car fast don't have that extra scare of hoping they don't actually hit a tree if they go off course. As now we get the cars lining up, and it's going to be a very short pace lap, as we'll start actually just before turn 10.
Yeah, very short indeed. Not much time to get warmed up at all. And by the way, high teens Celsius is what, maybe low 70s Fahrenheit, something like that, maybe 60s, somewhere there. It is pretty cool on the track temperature. It's going to take some warming up, and there's going to be some very cold breaks as well going down towards turn 1. So, as you say, almost no time to warm those up, and that could add to the potential for chaos in this opening lap.
About 65 Fahrenheit is what we're looking at for that track temperature. It is very chilly on the track surface, comparatively at least. There you go. There's your temperatures in Celsius over there. Very little wind, thankfully. But it's early in the morning, so hasn't had a chance to warm the track up with the sun beating down on there. In fact, much of it, you'll see, is still in the shade from the trees that are all around. Already, the pace car is off, and Robbie Prescott has control of the field. It doesn't look like Polasek has been able to line up, so there is an empty side on the front row. That is a nightmare if he's going to have to start from pit lane here. And we wait for Prescott to get the green flag. It takes a little bit, and there it is. As the green flag waves, Robbie Prescott is off, and he's got a very clear run coming down to the first corner. He still tries to cover off the inside just to be careful, as now he starts to fade back across the racing line. But look, they have not gone away from this too wide all the way down through the field as they head into the hairpin of one, Ewan.
Someone had to drive off to driver's right there to avoid hitting the back of someone else, but I think that was the only bit of problem there on the way towards turn 1. A dream start for Robbie Prescott, clear on the start line, clearing towards turn 1 as well. Michael Polasek didn't make the start. He has re-emerged from the pit lane, though. He's going to have to work his way through from 31st as we get into turn 4 and 5. Someone else is off into the wall in this difficult braking zone.
Looks like it's Klaus Nielsen, who is unfortunately off the track in turn 4. We've sometimes called that one yard sale corner just because of how many massive wrecks you have to just leave cars scattered across the grass. But thankfully, only one falling victim here today. Just about already done with this first lap. Robbie Prescott is your leader. Joachim Baker has picked up the pieces with our front row starting in the pits. And then we got a little bit of a battle for third there between Cyphers and Rodriguez, just up in front of the car we're focusing on. Let's see what happens here. Coming down into the corner, and Rodriguez makes quite the chop across Cyphers.
Certainly did. This is what happened to Klaus Nielsen. I feel like there's a little bit of previous to that, which meant he was on the inside towards turn 4. Thankfully, he didn't roll back onto the circuit and collect anybody else. But yeah, I think he might have been pushed to the right-hand side of the circuit there, and trying to slow down on the grass has speared off to the left-hand side. But he's well down the field, and the first driver to visit pit lane now as well. With Michael Polasek so far down, and in missing the last round at Donington Park, he effectively doesn't have a drop weight to fall back on like all the others do. And so Bryce Rodriguez and Derek Cyphers are effectively battling for the championship lead. If these two continue in 3rd and 4th at the moment, they are fighting for the championship lead, with whoever finishes ahead of the other taking that mantle into round 5.
That's a great point. Yeah, there's just a little bit of extra impetus on them now to do well and try to beat one another as we come off that final corner. Watching Mark Nister chasing on Logan Grotto. This has been very close all lap long, but Logan critically gets the exit he needs off of Paddock Bend. So that'll keep him out of range as they hit the brakes down into turn 1. Behind them, a little bit of a fight happening between, it looks like, Jim Huth and I think that's Thomas Briggs.
Yeah, it was Briggs diving down the inside, and pretty successfully as well. And that's what I mentioned earlier on. First of all, Huth didn't defend it, which maybe he should have done. But if you're late enough and you're brave enough on the brakes, you can make things happen round here, as shown by Briggs, on Huth, in towards turn 1 and into turn 5. I've been impressed so far with the chances created, although it's a bit more of a precarious opportunity.
So I believe we're going to be seeing Michael. No, it looks like he may have already served it. I'm not entirely sure, but Polasek has been black flagged for starting from pit lane without notifying race control. They require you to let them know. It's a newer-ish rule, and he has had extra heaped onto him here.
Yeah, he did serve that. It's the shortest pit lane in the world, though. Only 11 seconds to drive through. He's probably only lost about 8 seconds out of that.
You're right. He's 8 seconds back from Jonathan Waltman. So good guess on that one. It looks like he's already trying to see if he can make that back up. We check back in on the battle between Nistor and Logan Grotto, but still Nistor can't seem to try and find his way by. We feared that maybe a little bit of single file, and who is that? Did we make out who that was that went off track there?
No, because they re-emerged back where they were before so seamlessly that I couldn't spot them in the crowd. They just slipped in and sort of evaded me immediately, so I don't know who that was, apologies, but it was just that concertina effect I was talking about before the race. It only thankfully reared their head for one person who slapped the wall and then just rejoined where they were in the first place.
Yeah, I went back to see if I could find a car painted like that, and I couldn't really sort them out here, so we'll look at that later, see if we can figure out who that was. Thankfully, it looks like they were able to keep racing without too much of a problem, as Prescott still leads Baker by about 1.6 seconds. It's Joachim who's got some trouble behind him. Bryce Rodriguez, who remains a threat to the gap of about half a second.
Yeah, Rodriguez has made the most encouraging start, I think, out here, the top 5. This is awkward. Back here, now, Eric Sutton involved in that. Was it him, maybe, who slapped the wall at turn 1? Well, he was certainly slapped there by someone else at the final corner.
It looks like that was him, and he's in pit lane now. So, did he get a black flag, actually? If he did, he has already served it.
Okay. So, well, they're both in pit lane now, and Klaus Nielsen, by the way, we commented, went in pit lane early on. He has re-emerged again after a minute and a half, so we've still got all 31 on the circuit, albeit some of them damaged.
So it was not a black flag, it appears, because it was Rodney Campbell who was blamed for that incident. So he served that penalty already, and Bryce Rodriguez was showing the nose coming down into Paddock Bend, but he couldn't quite get through. It's a bit of a run out of that penultimate corner down to the final turn, but it's so tempting. It just doesn't seem like there's much to it, Ewan.
It's very difficult at the final corner to do anything, unfortunately. You're better off waiting for turn 1 here. And Rodriguez has probably learned that lesson now. Another driver on the move, by the way, is Thomas Briggs, who got past Mark Nister as well a couple of laps ago. He's now up to 6th place. I mentioned that Rodriguez was one of the most exciting and aggressive drivers early on, but Briggs has now, I think, gained 7 places from the beginning already. We're not even 7 minutes in yet.
Oh, look at that. Baker's already been overtaken. This Rodriguez got him somewhere out of wagon wheel. That's turn 3. And I'm not sure if that was a mistake out of Joachim or if he just let him go, but that happened very suddenly with no real indication it was going to happen.
Yeah, I get the feeling Bakker might have run wide through turn 3 and that bit of trip through the gravel might have slowed him down, but that's just pure speculation. Let's have a look. No, not really. He seemed to just give that up, actually.
Well, I kind of wondered if maybe he just decided he's faster. I'll let him through and see if I can ride with him up to the leader.
It's a bit weird, though. I'd suggest track position a bit more important. I get your point about wanting to stay with Rodriguez right the way up to Prescott, because Bakker was getting absolutely destroyed by Prescott in the first 7 minutes. Oh, well, none of it matters now. He's gone for a spin at turn 1.
Oh, and he's having trouble getting it back going. He's experienced some of the sort of faux barriers you were talking about they have around here. They're kind of the old style where it's just an earthen embankment. And in the real world, that would really stop the car a lot easier. Here in the sim, it doesn't necessarily. He almost damaged it. Trying to get going as down into yard sale. That got really tight for a moment up here at the sharp end of the field.
This has been good racing so far, and it continues in the bottom right as we have a look at Bakker's spin. Looked like he just got on the power there too soon, and completely self-inflicted. He wasn't helped around at all there, but completely self-inflicted that one, and there here's his fight with the grass bank afterwards.
Thankfully, I guess that was the smaller end of it, is we're still fighting between Briggs and Grado, and Logan's going to hold on to it, but he has not the greatest of exits coming off the final turn. Here comes Thomas looking for the inside, but he's immediately covered off on this narrow track down into the braking of turn 1. He'll try and outdo him around the outside into that corner, but no dice once again. He has to shut the door on Mark Nister because of it.
Yeah, I think therein lies the problem a little bit when you're an attacking driver in this field, as this is what happened a few moments ago, so he set up the move. You can very easily defend, and again, in towards turn 3, it's difficult to get the run, and now as soon as Briggs does all of this, Nister is here, Chan as well, and the concertina effect, by the way, through 4 and 5 gets really, really tight, and so watch out for this down the hill. They get away with it this time round, but look at the size of the group now.
It's just backing them up and up and up. It goes all the way to Nicky Chan in 12th. And remember, this is a fight essentially for 4th at the front of this group.
It is, yeah. That was a huge knock on the curves there from Thomas Briggs, by the way. They're quite vicious, actually, through turns 7, 8 and 9 as you're trying to get that exit we were talking about earlier to the final corner.
Yeah, that's that carousel section. It kind of weaves around back there, slower, more fiddly bits at the end of the lap, or middle of the lap, really, as the 22 still chases on Grotto. He's close, but he doesn't show himself in the mirrors down into the braking zone. He'll stay patient and stay in line, and that might open up the door, as he did make Logan break a little bit deeper comparatively, but now he's on the wrong side of the track once again, up into Wagon Wheel, one of the few places with elevation changes. It crests over this left-hander.
You can just distract the driver in front of you, though, for a run down towards 4 and 5. Will Grotto move it over to the left here to defender? Will Briggs be afforded the dive down the inside? He didn't go for it anyway, but Grotto was defending it. Mark Nister had a look up the inside. He's taking some different lines as well. It's so interesting through this slower speed section where you can get really, really close and try and get alongside. There's that quite vicious curve on the right-hand side there, and they'll miss them through this final section through turn 9, and they'll get out onto the higher speed section again. But I've been very impressed with this race so far. It's been very, very entertaining indeed, very engaging, and there's a lot still to happen here in the remaining 50 minutes.
Plenty that could happen with the way it's bubbling up with this group that has not been able to separate from one another. Only 10 minutes into this thing. This time, we see a little bit of a change for Thomas Briggs, and he's actually going to try and outbrake him. Gets to the inside. Logan Grotto does not fight it at all, and he is through. That'll be P4 for the 22 car.
Now, I mentioned late braking might well be the best weapon here today, and Thomas Briggs certainly has that. Now up to 4th place. He's got to be verging on 10 places gained so far in this race, as we now go on board with Arthur Chan in the 7th position. He's the last of the 16 drivers who can be on the top of the standings today, although it is pretty unlikely that he will be as they make their way around this corner. Now we'll start to see whether Logan Grotto is really the cork in the bottle or not, and the question or the answer at the moment is looking like he might well be.
Yeah, he's already losing touch with Briggs in front of him. And you were saying that Thomas may have had an impressive run up the order. It's not just 4. He's up 9 positions already in 10 minutes. This has been an amazing blast at the sharp end of the highest and fastest field in PCA. So that says something about the speed that the 22 has underneath him. Meanwhile, here comes Mark Nister on Logan Grotto, but not going to try it this time down in the first corner.
If I could just be cynical about Briggs for a second, maybe it says more about his qualifying performance than his... sorry, but, you know, I'll have to say it as well, just for balance. Just for balance. But no taking away how impressive it is to go through 9 drivers. I'm just not sure he quite should have qualified where he did. He might be kicking himself. Anyway, that's in the past now. He's still well within a shout of a podium. I mean, he's only second away from Derek Cyphers at the moment in that podium position. So he's well on for a podium here, but you just wonder whether he could have stayed with the leaders had he qualified with them.
And really in a tough spot, Mark Nister has been trying to attack as well as defend at the same time. He wants to get by Logan, but he's got Arthur Chan close behind. They'll come up over the rise here that leads down what is kind of the back straight, but then only has one more corner before you reach the front straight here through Paddock Bend. He's going to have to focus on the exit off the corner. He doesn't get it, does Arthur Chan. He's falling off those ahead of him, and now Jim Huth is starting to become a problem.
That was Christopher Cook going for a spin out of turn 1, by the way, in the main part of your screen. Just breaking tracks in a little bit. But yeah, side by side, I think for 7th place briefly. Alpha Chan was under a bit of pressure from James Hoof there, but couldn't do anything. And these are not live pictures, as you can see. Christopher Cook getting back going again. But now, lap traffic will start to be a little bit of a factor. Klaus Nielsen is still driving around, although he's not going to be lapped by these guys despite being a lap down. Eric Sutton, though, is only about 15 seconds ahead of Robbie Prescott, so it's not too far away from beginning.
So we watch that 95 circulate around and try to hold on to this spot here in 3rd as Thomas Briggs gets ever closer to him. That's got to be a little bit concerning, considering it looked like he was clear for a while. Now the complexion of the race has changed, and let's not forget, we still have pit stops to go. And with this being such a short pit stop, will that make it even harder to try and jump your rivals? We watch Robbie Prescott, who has just been absolutely running away. He's now 3 seconds ahead of Rodriguez.
Although Rodriguez hasn't let that gap go out any further, but he's just not bringing it down at the moment. So he does have the speed of Prescott, but just needed to start this race in 2nd place, really, so that he could stay with him, and didn't really get that opportunity, of course, early on. So that could be quite tricky for Rodriguez to try and bring that down. This is not the tactical pit lane kind of race that I was expecting at all, actually. This is a lot more of an on-track battle sort of race than I was expecting it to be, and that's a good thing, entertainment-wise. But it just takes away the importance slightly of the pit stop. It will be important, of course, especially in a group like this, from 5th place on backwards, if it retains right the way to that pit stop cycle. But it's not quite as important. I mean, Robbie Prescott could have a 2-second longer stop than Rodriguez and still not even have to worry about giving up slipstream. You know, we're talking about much bigger gaps than we were at Barber.
Meanwhile, I was kind of looking to see where the field was in these first 15 minutes. How soon are we going to get the lap traffic? And while we might have a few cars spotting it on the tail end of the field, I think it's basically down to about 27th or 28th that is still with the main pack, and they're about 25 to 26 seconds apart. That's the entire field from 1st down to 26. That's pretty incredible, considering we've had some time, and just, again, goes to show that the field's very, very close on pace with one another.
Yeah, and an average gap of less than a second through the top 27, which is remarkable, especially considering there's 2 3-second gaps in the top 3. So it is a very, very close midfield, especially. And look at that at the top of your screen there just a moment ago. Michael Polosek setting fastest laps. He is coming through the field away from our cameras, by the way. He was up to 23rd last time I looked. He might even be even further through the field now. No, he's still 23rd, just in this very long train you were referencing there. As we go on board with Thomas Briggs. Sorry, not Thomas Briggs, but Logan Grado trying to work it. Oh, this is Thomas Briggs. Sorry, he's catching Derek Cyphers, the 3rd.
Sometimes it helps to be able to read backwards lettering. I suppose. I have to do that so much in this job, looking at windscreens. And yeah, he is doing a good job here in this group. He's caught up to Derek Cyphers, but I think Cyphers as well, turning up the wick to try and keep him at arm's length in this early stage. There you can see the two of them down into turn 1. This is the battle for 3rd position. So podium spot up for grabs, with Briggs looking to make it a 10-position gain if he can sneak by here.
And don't forget, Derek Cyphers, with Michael Polosek so far down, does have a chance to be the championship leader at the end of the day if he finishes ahead of Bryce Rodriguez. And they're both in the top positions as they are right now, but he is a few seconds away from doing that. And he probably won't be worried quite about that either just yet. More worried about consistency and retaining the consistency that he and Rodriguez especially have shown to a degree that nobody else can really replicate in the field. Derek Cyphers' worst result so far is 5th place back at Barber. Rodriguez's worst position is also at Barber, 4th place. The two of them have done very well, and that's going to help. That's Briggs off in the background.
Pushed a little bit too hard, and look at how much this is costing him. 1 gets by, 2 gets by, maybe 3, not quite. That is Arthur Chan, who couldn't seal the deal, but still, not only is positions lost, but lots and lots of time up to Derek Cyphers, who he was chasing. There you can see the distance up to that blue and black car.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty inexcusable mistake for Thomas Briggs to really make there, because he's got such a gap behind him. He shouldn't be pushing right to the ragged edge so that he loses 3 seconds in one mistake, I don't think. I mean, it's not as bad as it could have been, but I don't really see the reason for him pushing that hard to get third place with over 40 minutes to go. Something that's cost him not only the progress that he's worked so hard for over the first 15 minutes, but actually maybe a chance at a podium place as well. It's a really difficult mistake to really justify. You'd maybe justify it if he was pushing for the win in the last lap, but I mean, he's pushing for third with nearly 3/4 of an hour left.
That's a good point. So not sure if that was himself just pushing too hard or maybe just blinked when he shouldn't have, but whatever the case, the damage was done. Let's see here. Let's give it another little look. This is a difficult part through this S's section. The car looked like it snapped a little loose, actually.
Yeah, it's maybe not the mistake I thought it was, actually. I thought he was just getting on the power too early and pushing too hard, but actually did look like it got loose a little bit in a slightly odd fashion that maybe he hadn't quite experienced like that before. Got away from him and did a decent job gathering it up and not hitting the wall. So, maybe not quite the over ambition that I was initially talking about, but either way, it has undone a lot of his progress. That much is true, and he's got a lot of work to sort of redo those overtakes now on Mark Nister and Logan Grado, who is now back behind again.
We've got some takers in pit lane. Jochen Baker, looks like Chris Cook and Michael Polasek. So drivers who are somewhat out of position, all taking the time to pit. Klaus Nielsen, by the way, also got a black flag for contact a little bit earlier. So I think let me check to see if he served that, actually. Yeah, it looks like he has served that. So that one is over and taken care of. Now, speaking of taking care of things, we want to give another mention about Charlie Mobile. Charlie Mobile is your ticket to staying connected at full throttle with light and fast 5G speeds and unlimited data, talk, and text. They're the wireless service for those who live life in the fast lane. Whether you're tracking lap times or sharing your latest victory with fellow Porsche fans, Charlie Mobile has you covered with zero hidden fees or contracts. Plus, they're proud to give back, donating to causes that matter both locally and beyond. Ready to join a wireless service that goes the extra mile? Switch to Charlie Mobile and experience the difference on and off the track. On the track right now, still got a great battle going in this group, although it's a little bit farther apart than we saw before. About the most breathing space we've seen all race long, but Nistor is showing himself coming down at a yard sale on Grotto. He wants to get up to P4.
I wonder if the extending gaps at the front of this group here is a little bit down to the fact that Nister hasn't really been attempting to make any moves on Grado until that thought popped into my head and then he started doing it again, or whether it's Grado just putting on the pace a little bit more. We were talking about Grado being a bit of a cork in the bottle earlier on in this race, and I think that much was true, but now there are some gaps starting to form and maybe he's starting to get into this race, get his head in the game a little bit and think, yeah, I am as quick and maybe quicker than some of the drivers in this group. It certainly looks like Arthur Chan is struggling to stay with him right now.
On board with Briggs now. He's kept Arthur Chan behind him, as you mentioned, and Mark Nister is the next one up the road with the sunrise glinting off these beautiful Porsches coming out of turns 1 and 2 and then up into wagon wheel. So hard to spot your entry and apex at this corner. It's a bit blind on your way in, and then same thing down into 4, except this one's downhill as you come over the crest and then try to line up the tricky braking into yard sale. Nobody able to change positions in this group, at least for the time being. And you have to give Logan credit. It seems like he's been holding steady in spite of the pressure he's been under the entire race.
Yeah, I think it's easy to underestimate the pressure he's been under so far, and it's a good job that good job from him, I should say, that he's been able to hang on from that so far. One thing I did notice down towards turn 1 last time round, by the way, was Thomas Briggs maybe saving fuel. I reckon after he's made that error, he's decided, well, instead of going through the trouble of overtaking them on the circuit again, I'm going to try and shorten my pit stop up. He lifted off a little bit, but what else he did was brake quite late and actually not shift down until almost he was at the apex of the corner. He was still in 6th gear with, turning approaching very quickly, so just keeping those revs a bit lower and saving a little bit of fuel. Now, of course, that is fraught with a bit of danger because you don't get the engine braking that you normally would, and it's not the recommended way to save fuel, shall we say. However, it may just be an indicator of what he's doing in response to that mistake he made a few minutes ago.
Man, that's a good point, and that does make me think. One of the other side effects of having a lap as short as this is that also opens. Well, it doesn't open the pit window any wider, but it gives you more opportunities to stop in when you need. You think about longer tracks like Road America, like Spa, where it could be quite limited on your fuel window because you don't want to get caught out going that one lap longer if you don't have enough. This one, you probably could try and fudge things a little bit. It's only 2 miles.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those circuits where you're absolutely thinking about that over the course of a race, because it is only 2 miles in length. And to be honest, I thought we were going to see a bit more of it here tonight, a bit more fuel saving, but we have not so far. However, now with 36 minutes to go, it feels like this is the first bit of calm really we've seen. It's been pretty all-out action in the top 10 through the first 15 minutes, but maybe in the last 5 or so, it's just began to calm down a bit.
Just a bit, but definitely not completely out of the woods for if you're Logan in this number 3 car. In fact, he goes defensive down into turn 5 this time, just trying to cover off Mark Nister. He doesn't feel completely safe at this stage, trying to open up the right-hander, long double apex right-hander here from Mark Nister to get himself a better launch as the GT3 Cup cars try to use what little grip they have coming down onto the backstretch. We'll also watch the battle for 16th on the top of your screen to see if either will change hands here at this stage of the race. The battle for 4th stays put on the main straight, so the battle for 16th, will we get any closer? No, it looks like a great exit there for Franznik on the top of your screen, keeping Facciolo away.
Yeah, this is the battle, I think, that Michael Parsek was trying to avoid by pitting in, but actually what he has done is, has he pitted another time, or has he just had a very long stop? Because he's now 2 laps down as far as our timing screen was suggesting there a few moments ago.
He's showing us out of the race for me. I'm not sure what happened, but he's retired the car.
Okay, that's interesting. That is big news as far as the championship is concerned, of course, because he is the series leader coming into today. However, he's, of course, because of that one drop round he had at Donington Park where he scored 0. If he also scores 0 here, it's an absolute disaster as far as his championship's concerned. He'll be in a situation like he was last year, or last season, I should say, where winning a lot of races, but not the championship.
Ooh, we're understanding he had a black flag from iRacing for too many incidents. You get 17 incidents and you're given a drive-through. So it appears he may have decided he was so far back that he's just calling it. I mean, that undid his work for a 3rd time, I guess we could say, for this race.
Yeah, but it's quite unusual to throw in the towel like that. I mean, fair enough. He's he certainly had a lot going on today, and it's been a pretty turbulent race. However, yeah, pretty surprised he's thrown in the towel this early. So there we go. He's out the race, and with that might go his championship chances as well.
Yeah, it's not that long of a season, so it'll be tough to try and recover from that. Back into the technical section of the track on the back half of the course as the 3 just continues to trot along and not let those behind him phase him. He's not exactly lost touch with Derek Cyphers, to his credit. It's only about 1.5 seconds between them, so it's not a massive gap between the top drivers ahead of them, though. It's opened up slightly, 4.5 seconds between 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, each equidistant. So we'll check back in with Nick Facciolo, as I think we just had one of our drivers head into the pits, Thomas Briggs, but we get a very cool little VR cam from Nick, as well as moccasin cam.
And those slippers have got to be worth some time. Look at those. Absolutely brilliant. That's gaining him some time here tonight for Nick Facciolo, that is for sure, as he works his way down in towards turn number 1, late on the brakes, and avoiding the car ahead of you. Just following along, really. Real lot of lock required in towards turn 1. But yeah, great onboard view with him. And it's always great to see what's happening actually behind the wheel for these drivers.
He heard loose is fast, and he thought that applied to dress code. So that's the reason, I'm guessing. Anyways, we jump back up to Logan, and things have separated more than we've seen in quite some time. Mark Nister is no longer breathing down his neck. Will we see him maybe try to duck off and take a pit stop like we saw at least one of the other front runners do? Thomas Briggs? Nope, they're going to stay out as they just clip the dirt off of the final turn.
Yeah, Briggs is in a little bit of danger, though. He needs quite a lot of stops to happen quite soon. He's only 9 seconds behind this train if you really extend it right the way down to the just outside the top 20 drivers. He's only 9 seconds off the back end of these guys, and that is a real concern for him. He cannot afford to be fighting his way through this group, or his strategy will be completely ruined.
That's why we often will say that you tend to see drivers try to go long and just pit as late as they can so they don't get caught up with that. But you still will try to play those pitting games, those strategy games to make up track position, especially at a circuit like this. We've been hounding on it, but you can see just how tough it is to try and pass here. This battle for fourth has been absolutely stuck for quite some time. Logan Grotto lost that fourth place briefly and then inherited it right back just by keeping it on the island.
Yeah, maybe there's a lesson to be learned in that for the remainder of this race. I think what else he's done, though, he's just increased his pace a little bit here in the last 10 minutes or so. You can notice the group is still large and you can still see it all behind him. However, it's nowhere near as close together as an entity in itself as it was earlier on. So that's pretty interesting to see for him and indeed for everybody else in this group. So yeah, it shows he's getting quicker, I'd imagine. I wouldn't have thought everyone else is getting slower. I think he's just turning on the pace.
It does look like that. And we'll watch from James Huth now, who currently sits in P7 in that number 12 machine, giving chase on Arthur Chan. We were kind of watching their battle a little bit earlier, but that has not changed since we last checked on it, other than maybe the distance between them is slightly different. So what's going to mix this up between these two as they come around through the penultimate turn? Actually, a little more tricky than you would imagine, especially in these higher powered cars. Probably getting that throttle down is tough. And Logan Grotto now going to try and get the pedal to the floor out of the final turn. Keeps it out of the gravel this time. You'll see them clip that a lot, as it is so important off that turn, Ewan, to get as good of a run as you can.
Yeah, by far the longest straight on this circuit, down in towards turn number 1, and so that final corner is a really important one and a really committed one as well. A pretty enjoyable one to drive. I would say that maybe going along with turn 3, those two corners are very similar. That's probably the most technically challenging and maybe interesting corner to drive round, and as I say, really important as well for your run down towards turn 1. Normally with fast corners like that, it means that the field gets actually quite stretched apart, or a battle gets quite stretched apart, and so there's little chance in towards turn 1, but it's not really the case with this final corner, maybe because the straight's so long, but it doesn't seem to spread these cars apart particularly much, and it still provides decent opportunities down towards turn 1 for the trailing driver.
Absolutely, and like I said earlier, these cars not known for having a ton of downforce on them. Remember, these are the Cup cars, not GT3 class. Even though I know the name is a bit confusing, but they are able to follow pretty darn closely. Unfortunately, that also means they don't punch the biggest hole in the air, so you're seeing them not closing up as much as you'd expect, despite hitting about 160 down that main straight.
Yes, properly high-speed stuff on the way down towards turn number 1, and certainly the best overtaking opportunity on the circuit. I don't believe we've seen really any overtakes, successful ones anyway, in towards turn 5 just yet, unless I'm missing one. I feel like later on in the race, with the pressure ramping up, maybe in the final 10 minutes or so, we might start to see it. We've seen, some defensive lines taken. Logan Grotto has taken plenty of them in towards turn 5, but no legitimate moves made just there. It is all at turn 1 for now.
Yeah, you got to be very brave. And also, I feel like kind of hope that your rival does not go on the defensive. It kind of reminds me of Suzuka's run to the hairpin. That it's got that little kink in there, and everything happens so late, it's hard to predict which line your rival's actually going to take.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it does take a lot of commitment, a little bit of give and take between the two as well. You've also not least got to think about that, but also about the driver in front of you turning in just into you because they're focused on the apex and not anyone barreling down the inside. So it's there's a couple of dangers attached with that, and maybe that's why we haven't seen it so far. As I said, maybe the first half of the race is not the time for that, and maybe the final 10 minutes is. If you're getting desperate, then it might be something we see. But if your race is going well, I think you'd be avoiding that move as Enrico Gregorato makes his way into pit lane. Another driver that Thomas Briggs will pass as a result of this stop, or should do, and there he goes. He's now got 6 seconds to the back of that train I was talking about earlier that he really cannot afford to catch before they make their stops.
Yeah, so far his laps have looked pretty good here. 109.9, 109.6, 110 flat. So a little bit of fluctuation, but he seems to be in clear air. We're still watching that battle for fourth, though. And Logan Grotto, I think he's closed maybe a tiny bit on Derek Cyphers. It's not a whole lot. We have speculated that he's maybe turning up the wick a little bit, but doesn't seem to be enough to be able to completely close down an attack for a podium. But you never know. A second and a half, all it takes is one little off track, not even a spin, and Derek could be under threat or lose that spot. Yeah,
absolutely. It isn't going to take a lot round here. We talked about it before, but all of the circuits well, pretty much all of them on this calendar have very little room for error in terms of runoff. Monza probably has the most, but even then it's very little. So it's one of those calendars that you really do have to keep your wits about you. You have to take real care to keep it on the road, otherwise you'll be very quickly off, and as Thomas Briggs found out, your progress will be undone very quickly. This circuit certainly does punish mistakes in a way that maybe some of the more modern ones don't quite do in the same way.
Yeah, and personally, I'm here for it. I love when they challenge the drivers and really force them to step up their game. Speaking of which, I saw a little bobble from Mark Mister there coming out of the S's, so that helped him out, but it looks like it's coming right back to him because that was not the greatest of runs for Logan coming down the main straight. Christopher Cook runs too deep into turn one. He hits the gravel, but it looks like he'll just carry on without too much drama before he gets back on the circuit, or does he park it? Oh, he parked
in the pit lane. Yeah, he's been there for a while, unfortunately. This is Ryan Cowley. Oh, too much speed in towards turn 5, and has to re-emerge onto the circuit a few moments later as a result of just going a little bit too quickly, I'm afraid, down the hill there. The car can certainly run away from you. You mentioned earlier that this is not a very hilly circuit, but actually you do go over a rise there just after turn 3, and the brakes don't work quite as well against gravity, as you might have guessed, and so it does run away with you a little bit towards turn 5 if you're not ultra careful. It goes into that thing you were talking about earlier about overtakes being so difficult there. You're so committed and so stuck in braking where you have to brake to make the corner that you haven't really got a chance to react to someone moving around behind you or ahead of you.
Exactly. And you know, about that elevation, it seems against expectations, I'll say, because it's a track named Summit Point, you know, kind of implies it's on a hill somewhere, and it's in West Virginia, which is known for hills. But it's, I guess, in one of the few places in West Virginia where they found some slightly flat land to build a racetrack. And it's still, I still enjoy this track, and I love seeing racing here. But I would love to see maybe a little bit more of ups and downs.
Yeah, I must admit that's another American geography fail for me. I thought this was in the northeast, but anyway, that's I probably could have kept that to myself. Anyway, yes, it is surprising given the name, but then again, it is so short and it actually covers quite a small bit of land that actually it's not inconceivable that you could find 2 miles of flat land. It's, you know, it's not the biggest place in the world.
Yeah, that's a good point. That didn't take a whole lot for it as we got more drivers pitting. Looks like Joachim Baker, Enrico Gregorato has, Mike Patterson. So there's a few, but not many of our front runners. Most are trying to outlast here. And no wonder, I don't think they've seen much in the way of traffic up to this point. So there's been little reason for them to try and risk it and dive off.
I think the leaders might start to think about it, though, because Robbie Prescott is now only a couple of seconds behind Crowley, who has just come out of the pit lane there. In fact, I think only about 3 seconds behind. So he's really got to start to think about, do I want to trust that these guys are going to get out of the way with blue flags and they're not going to affect me at all, not going to distract me, or do I want to just pit in and get out of the way? I think he's sort of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. He's going to have to either go through on the blue flags or pit in and go through legitimate overtakes. And I think he might decide for the former option rather than the latter because of the blue flag situation, but neither are particularly ideal, and whichever one he does, he's going to end up in traffic because after all there is traffic on pretty much all of this circuit right now.
So riding once again with Nick Facciolo. One thing I do love when drivers manage to give us this VR view is this is about as close as you can get to a helmet cam. That's the driver's actual perspective, looking down into the apexes and seeing what they see, and also how bouncy it can sometimes be, especially on a track like this with older pavement up in the hills, as we alluded to in West Virginia. So down into the braking zone, that was a little bit of a sneaky look there late in the braking for Jim Huth on Arthur Chan for 6, but did not actually go for a move.
Yeah, and there's been very few of those in the middle third of this race, I've got to say. First third of the race was very entertaining, lots of overtaking. This middle third, a little bit quieter as we head towards the pit stops.
I have to admit, this is one of my favorite paint schemes out here right now. Absolutely gorgeous on Leif Peterson's machine, and easy on the eyes. Good use of the spec maps on iRacing. But while we're enjoying the prettiness, I do want to mention Charlie Mobile, which is your ticket to staying connected at full throttle. With lightning fast 5G speeds and unlimited data, talk, and text, they're the wireless service for those who live life in the fast lane. Whether you're tracking lap times or sharing your latest victory with fellow Porsche fans, Charlie Mobile has you covered with zero hidden fees or contracts. Plus, they're proud to give back, donating to causes that matter both locally and beyond. Ready to join a wireless service that goes the extra mile? Switch to Charlie Mobile and experience the difference on and off the track. So we return once again to the old faithful that still hasn't changed. Logan Grotto leading Mark Nister has not been able to overtake him. We keep thinking maybe at some point he's going to try and pull the trigger, see if he can undercut him and get that track position, but not yet.
No, not just yet. I feel like the undercut's going to be very difficult here because of the reasons I was outlining earlier on about the traffic round here. We're pretty much entirely covered this 2 miles now in some form of traffic or the other. Now, some of it may be blue flag, and that might be okay, but the likelihood is you'll be near someone who's battling for an actual position for you if you are pitting in early. So I think this could be extremely difficult for anybody looking to make an undercut work, but someone has got to be willing to try it. I mean, Thomas Briggs has already done so, but now he's in a world of hurt. He's just behind Matthew Jokel for 19th place, well back in the pack.
He's catching up to him, and unless Matthew does try and go and pit within the next probably 3 or 4 laps, he's probably going to have to actually overtake him on the circuit, and Matthew is not obligated to pull over. Nick Facciolo has pitted in, so there's another mid-packer that's going to give it a try with about 18 minutes left to go. As things close in down at a turn 5 here, continuing to keep our eyes on one of the more fascinating battles. There's Nick now coming out of pit lane. The other thing that, while it's not the worst pit exit here, it does kind of dump you right into a fast part of track, and with how you can maybe fit 3 wide if you're lucky. If any battles are approaching you, you can become a part of something you don't want to be a part of very fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do see a pit stop now from Logan Grado and Derek Cyphers by the looks of things, and Robbie Prescott. It's all happening here in pit lane. Bryce Rodriguez looks like he's in too. Mark Nister and Arthur Chan and James Hoop carry on. So pretty much an agreement across the board here as to when to make the pit stop. Out goes Robbie Prescott, out back onto the circuit again. 13.8 from him. He should be ahead of Briggs, but where is Briggs going to be in relation to some of the others? Bryce Rodriguez is going to be a long way ahead of him. He made his stop just half a second longer than Prescott's.
There's Prescott back out on the track. and he came out in 10th position. I can tell you that Briggs is coming around the final corner, and boy, he timed that one to perfection. He had just caught that train, and that train pitted right this lap. So he is freed up, ready to go. He's only 14th, though, right now.
And the holding back factor is the fact his pit stop was 10 seconds longer. So his pit stop may have been because he had to repair something, he had to do something to the car. I'm not entirely sure, but his pit stop was 10 seconds longer, and that may well have cost him some real time, as the rest of them, you'd imagine the top 9 will be in here.
That's a good point. This whole time we were watching how he was on track, I didn't even think to check his pit stop time, and that is dramatically longer, almost double the time that others have spent in pit lane, which is now becoming supremely busy. Thankfully, you can see the cars can go through one another, and I think that was Peterson. Oh, yeah.
It's the nice livery. Unfortunately, it was going backwards there for a second. That wasn't ideal, as he'll lose some time in places. Now, out the pit lane they go. None of those who pitted now are really going to trouble the top 5 eventually. Mark Nister is going to be back behind Logan Grado all over again. They're effectively as they were in the top 5.
So the scheme did not seem to quite work, and Thomas Briggs stays where he is. This is Chris Brown and Robbie Prescott. Now, this is for position. This is for third, but Chris owes us a pit stop. As we've seen, most of the drivers have been doing so lately, so I gotta imagine this is getting close to that pit window closing.
Yeah, but he doesn't owe Robbie a position just yet, so there will be time lost right now. It's not a blue flag. He's perfectly within his rights to defend this position if he wants to for the limited time he's got fuel remaining to do so. In will come Ed Eisenring, and there goes Brown as well. So Robbie Prescott will be into the lead all over again here. He will have been held back slightly, and he has lost a little bit of time to Bryce Rodriguez, who's now only 4.5 seconds behind him. But even so, it's a very small dent into a rather big lead.
So Braun gives the time back. Let's see where he emerges. It should be fuel only for these cars. There's not enough time to really merit trying to take new tires. And as he exits out, this looks to be actually right around Thomas Briggs, who's going to sneak on by. And Braun will wind up in 14th. So back to, I think this is our second place car here that we're watching.
Ed Eisenring, by the way, came out in the top 10. He's just dropped straight out of it. I can't tell you why, but you may have seen on the tower there on the left-hand side, he completely fell out the top 10, and he's lost a few seconds as well. I reckon he might have spun on his outlap here. Keep in mind, these Porsche Cup cars can't fuel and take tyres at the same time, so while you could maybe fit a tyre or two in a pit stop in which you can do both at the same time in a 12-second fuel stop, you can't, you'd have to stop longer in a Porsche Cup car. Otherwise, maybe you'd go about changing the rear left or something like that, but you know, it's not worth the time to change any tyres in an hour-long race.
I went back and checked, and good catch on the timing, because Eisenring did make contact with Nicky Chan on the way out of pit lane. So both of them went off track, waiting to see if the race control is going to have some sort of decision on that.
Nicky Chan or Arthur Chan? Are we? Or am I?
Nicky Chan, yeah. Nicky Chan's the one behind him.
Okay. That stuck me. I didn't even realise there were two in this race. So there you go. But there are two in the top 12 anyway. So yeah, that would make sense as to why he's dropped out the top 10 and lost those few seconds to Christopher Pies, who, by the way, came in right behind him. However, is now ahead of him and running a decent race in 9th place, although a quiet race.
Yeah, Chris tends to do that. He's good at picking them up and putting them down, but needs a little bit more pace this time to try and get himself into a top 5 or maybe a podium. Here is what happened between the pair of them. Nicky, wow. He might have already been on his way off, though.
Yeah.
He looked like he was coming in very shallow and fast into that corner.
There is a bit of damage there that looks pretty suspect on the back, but I think you're right. I think he was already going off, and Chan just followed him. Here comes the aggression in the final minutes of the race then. The battles are about to pick up all again here, and Derek Seifers is going to have to fight hard for this podium place, with Logan Grado really growing into this race, but lap by lap.
Oh, he's going to have his hands absolutely full, overflowing. Not only is he trying to pass Derek, but he's still got Mark Nister, who's assuredly sick of sitting behind him. There's a different angle on the incident down into turn one between the pair of them. All I can say is Ed Eisenring was given a black flag drive-through penalty. So they're putting the blame on him on that one, which is interesting since he was the car ahead. But regardless, they've had a better chance to take a look at that while this battle for the final podium spot gets ever hotter. A little off the apex there for Derek Cyphers, but Logan isn't close enough to capitalize.
Yeah, just for the moment. He's not going to do it into the final corner, but what about getting the run here? Cyphers missed the apex there, which isn't going to help. You need to be right up tight to the right-hand curb, and Cyphers wasn't, I'm afraid. Logan Grader is going to have a good run down the front straight, and he's going to pull pretty easily to the right-hand side. Cyphers letting him do it as well, which is a surprise, but I suppose he did last lap, and it worked out all right. This time, though, he just gives up the podium place. That's a bizarre bit of agreement between the two. You'd think with 12 minutes to go he'd fight that harder.
Well, we've already seen one of the front runners dip out because they got a black flag for too many incident points. I wonder if it has proven a bit tricky here to keep from racking those up, and they're trying to play it safe. Plus, as we've seen, the stewards here are extremely strict. Whoa, and that's a mistake. Logan did such a beautiful job all race long and even made a beautiful pass, and yet it all falls apart in one corner.
Oh, you could just see it happening there from the start of that braking zone. You could just see it I could almost envision him thinking, oh dear, I've got this slightly wrong, and I've got down to the brakes a bit too late. And he's thrown his progress away. Not only has he allowed Cyphers back through into the podium, he's actually let Mark Nister through for the first time, I believe, all race. After holding him back this entire time, he's going to be livid that he's let it go right at the very end after such a flawless first 50 minutes. But here he comes again on Mark Nister. Live pictures, the bottom right-hand side of your screen. He's coming back.
He's got the inside coming down into the first hairpin, and he's going to just take that apex away. A textbook move from Logan. He may have given it up for about half a lap, but he was quick to pick that one back up. That just shows how difficult that run through turn 5 is. Even after looking like he just can do no wrong all race, Logan Grotto just made the tiniest of errors and sent it in a little too hot, and that gave up 2 positions in the blink of an eye. Now, he's got to repeat the feat of somehow overtaking Derek Cyphers, but now Derek's going to be wise to the tactics of Logan.
Yeah, I certainly think he can do it, though. Logan seems to be really getting into this race now late on. I just wonder whether he was conserving tyres early on, whether he was just easing himself in. I don't know what he was doing in the first 20 minutes of the race, but he was a real cork in the bottle and a thorn in the side of everybody in the top 10, apart from the podium sitters. But now he's suddenly got a lot quicker. Now he's going to need at least another lap or two to get closer to Cyphers to redo that move, but I think he can with time on his side as well.
You bring up an interesting point with the tires. It is a short lap, which means other than this front straightaway, they don't get much chance to rest, much like the driver. I wonder if he was just playing possum a little bit and holding back all race to preserve it now for the final sprint at the end here.
Yeah, it's possible. We'll have to speak to one of these drivers about tyre wear and stuff and see how much of a factor it is, because, I mean, it's fair to say I got things wrong at Barber in that I didn't think fuel saving would be a big factor around there. It clearly was. Maybe tyres will be a bigger factor around here than I thought. Especially there's some of these traction zones which are pretty tricky on the rear tyres. This one here out of turn 7 and awkwardly through 8 and 9 as well. That's a difficult traction zone. And also out of turn number 1, you're turning while accelerating. So pretty much any time you're getting back on the power, you're still turning, which puts real load on that outside rear tyre. And maybe that is just what Greta was being ultra careful of early on, even despite these really low temperatures. I mean, I would be surprised if it was a big factor.
Yeah, it is a bit of a head scratcher, but I'm with you. Let's hope that we get to chat with a few drivers post-race to get more information. Checking back in with Arthur Chan. And, well, they've gotten the band back together. This is a lot of that first group that we saw that are once again battling one another. This time, though, it's Derek Cyphers who is leading this train instead of Logan. It looks like Logan might be the slightly faster one because he's caught up to that blue and black machine very quickly. But we come down to about 7 minutes left, so maybe 6 more laps to go, maybe a full 7 laps left if we're generous on this one, and depending on where Prescott is. But this is by no means over.
No. Absolutely, and it's so interesting that a driver who was previously the cork in the bottle in the opening part of the race is now the aggressor in this group. It's fascinating to see as we look from up high at this run through the final corner, which is going to be so important. It's a nicer entry for Grado than it was for Nister there, who was quite tight on the way in. That's not going to help your exit here onto the front straight. Grado's line was a lot better for an exit, but you do need some form of area. You need some window of opportunity, and Cypher's just not giving that to Grado here, who still needs to get closer.
He's going to start laying on that pressure as much as he can if he can stick close the rear bumper of that number 95, but sometimes that's easier said than done, and he's going to have to try and do something in this, because I don't think it's looked like he's gotten a mistake out of him, at least that we've witnessed so far. It was just heavy braking down to the first corner that initially got him by. He takes a bit of a peek, and maybe he goes a little bit too wide as he opens the door for Nister ahead of them. They've got Eric Sutton, who is a lapped car, who just went off track as well. And now he's causing all kinds of headache for Logan. He's got no place to go.
Oh dear, is that the moment that confirmed Derek Cypher as a podium driver for the end of this race? Because at the moment the lap traffic's still in the way and now gets out of the way, but it was so difficult through that slow speed section to really do anything. Now Logan will get through, but all of that work to get closer to Cypher's gets undone, and now he might even need a bit of an error from the third place driver to get back involved again here. He might even not have the chance. Mark Nister is very close.
It's the old familiar rear guard action now for Logan, with Martin Nister the one trying to get by. There you can see, similar to the mistake he made earlier, going a little bit too hot into turn 5. This time I think he figured out how to keep the car from being worse off and kept himself from losing a position. Even still, the damage has been done, and he's still got to make up about 0.7 of a second to Derek.
You can tell, can't you, that he is pushing harder than he was earlier in the race. He wouldn't have made this kind of mistake in the first 2/3 of this race, but you can just tell he's pushing harder now, because he is making those 1 or 2 errors. You know, running wide here or there is okay, because you know that you're pushing hard here, and you can see that the effort's being put in now. There is a case, of course, to be made that maybe you're trying a bit too hard. I don't think that applies to Logan Grado just yet, but that is something to be mindful of. But this shows more than anything he is pushing on here, and that is fantastic as we see him come through the final corner, again up the curb, a little bit in the gravel on the outside. He's really going for this, but is it a question of too little too late, with, I believe, 5 laps remaining, including this one?
I'll tell you who is probably salivating at all of this is Arthur Chan, because he's been seeing the tension ramp up in front of him. He knows that should anybody make an ill-fated move, he'll be there to try and pick that one up, but he's going to have to be very assertive on his way into the corners or out of the corners if he wants to try and take a position off them. Meanwhile, watching the battle for 11, Thomas Briggs, boy, this one kind of fell apart for him, unfortunately, with that early strategy call. Just doesn't seem to be getting him what we thought it would after he looked so promising at the start. And for Briggs, he is now in 11th. You know, I kind of wonder, with the long pit stop and him being so much faster, I wonder if he short-fueled it at the beginning.
Yeah, I don't know what he did, to be honest, but it hasn't worked. I think if you vote him up the order to where he otherwise should have been, I know it's pretty inaccurate, I should say, to just take 10 seconds off his time at the moment, but that would put him in this sort of group with Hoof and Brooks, James Hoof and Kerry Brooks, just in behind the battle you're seeing at the bottom of your screen. So that seems about right. But yeah, we need to try and get to the bottom somehow of what happened in that pit stop, because that was very strange that he just lost those 10 seconds out of seemingly nowhere.
Yeah, I'm taking a guess in my mind that it has something to do with that. Usually you put the maximum fuel in for these one-stop races and you try to shorten the pit stop as much as you can at the end. But that is neither here nor there, because we have this excellent fight that is coming upon more lap traffic. Jonathan Waltman, and the traffic has played a factor here in these final laps, and now we get some side-by-side action and some door rubbing up through Wagon Bend. Nicky Chan is going to bang doors once again with Chris Braun. Braun is going to try to come out ahead of him, but they're going to remain wheel to wheel down into turn 5. Chris goes way too deep. He's off into yard sale, and unfortunately, it's going to be a cheap sale.
Chan went quite deep on the brakes as well. You could see how hard they were both trying. Neither of them wanted to give that up. They were clashing into each other again and again out of turn 3. But eventually, one of them had to go off, I'm afraid, and it was Braun on the outside there, which is a shame. But that's just what can happen going side by side through 4 and 5. Maybe that's an advert as to why you shouldn't really do it.
I'd say so, and we get things heating up again for Cyphers. Logan has cut it down. This is about the 3rd time we've seen him have to close back in on his rival, although it looked like he was just clipping the dirt there. Coming over the crest out of 3. Nister starts to close. He's not nearly there to try and attack down into turn 5. They have reached the back of Jonathan Waltman. What happens from here?
Yeah, let's see. You'd hope, with a minute and a half remaining and what should be 2 laps remaining, maybe only 1, but let's see. You'd hope that the lap traffic will just get out of the way for all of them, not try and drop themselves into the group sort of halfway down, and maybe just try and get out of the way on the front straight here. This could be the last chance for Grado. I think we're going to get 2 laps to go, but it's not entirely clear as things stand. It will be 2 laps to go, so there will be a couple of chances, but Grado won't want to see this chance passing by, and the lap car does indeed get out of the way rather nicely. So now it is up to these 4 to fight out the final podium place.
Yeah, credit to Jonathan there to see that happening and do his best to get out of the way and not interfere in the battle. So it stays as is. Cypher's 3rd, Logan in 4th, Nister is 5th, and Chan is in P6. It's a long ways back to the next car, about 4 seconds to Jim Huth, so they have definitely dropped 7th place from them, but anywhere from 3rd to 6th could absolutely change hands here with a lap and a half left to go. They are line astern, nose to tail, and everyone waiting to see who blinks first.
Yeah, I think this is a run through the slower speed sections here that Grado might well come to regret, because that gap is quite large. I don't think he can overcome that now with Derek Cyphers up ahead. He might just have done enough to see off the challenge in towards turn 1 for the last time. Let's see what this run is like for Grado out the final corner. This will make or break his race. He's nowhere near close enough for Cyphers. It's about holding on to 4th, I think, now for Grado.
I think you're right, and yeah, it just was a poor exit, as this is our leader having taken the white flag. Robbie Prescott, the Chicago region driver, looked far and away the fastest, both in the practice sessions and in qualifying. He's making it a triple here today, as he will be fastest in the race if he holds on to this to the end. Who is going to get that last bit of champagne? It does look like Cyphers has got himself a little bit more of a buffer, but he's not completely done with it.
Not yet. Oh, that's quite deep. Cypher very deep in towards turn 5 there, but he hangs on, and Nister as well can't quite get through on Grado. Chan can't quite get through on Nister. So for all of the nice overtakes we were seeing in the first part of the race, it's become more difficult in these final 15 minutes.
And our winner today is Robbie Prescott for event number 4, a victory for the 01 car, appropriate here at Summit Point. Rodriguez going to get a 2nd place, and while it is close, it is not close enough if you're Logan Grado, because Derek Cyphers will get that last step on the podium. That was a brilliant last half for the 95 to hold off a charging pack of cars.
Yeah, it certainly was. That means it's the same 3 podium drivers for the 2nd round in a row. Derek Cyphers won it, Donington ahead of Rodriguez, and then Prescott this time round there in exactly the reverse order, giving Bryce Rodriguez the championship lead, by the way. He'll hold that by 9 points, with only 12 back to Robbie Prescott, who should move up to 3rd place. Michael Parsek will go from the top of the standings down to 85 points off the lead.
Wow. With 31 cars starting at a minute and 9 seconds most times per lap here, 24 of them managed to complete every lap of the race. That is just incredible that they managed that one. So we'll see if we get anybody to talk to as we go through our results here today. Robbie Prescott, your winner over Bryce Rodriguez, who is P2, and Derek Cyphers finishing in third. Logan Grotto, still a great race for that number 3 car to finish P4. Mark Nister in fifth, who certainly learned patience today. It was Arthur Chan who finished sixth, a gain of 4. A good run for him. Jim Huth was seventh, and Kerry Brooks was P8. Then you get to ninth with Chris Pies, and Leif Peterson, with a bit of a longer stop, winds up in 10th. Ewan.
Yeah, it was Joe Sinclair just missing out on that top 10, but held off Thomas Briggs there late on. We saw that battle intermittently. It was Nicky Chan next up, followed by Chris Brown and then Ned Eisenring, who of course clashed with Chan towards the end. Jürgen Bakker ran in the top 3 early on, but finished, I'm afraid, down in 16th place. Nick Fagiolo did get past James Franznik in the end. They finished 17th and 18th. Enrico Gregorato and Michael Patterson ran at the top 20.
21st goes to Brett Holmes with Ryan Cowley in 22nd. Then it is Chad Henson in 23rd and Rich Minkler, the last one on the lead lap, in 24th. Matthew Jokel was P25. Jonathan Waltman, who we saw do a great job trying to stay out of the way of the battling leaders, finished 26th. Eric Sutton, 27th. And then last of the drivers to actually finish was Klaus Nielsen in 28th. Cook, Polasek, and Campbell were a D and F. One last time, we do want to mention Charlie Mobile, which is your ticket to staying connected at full throttle. With lightning fast 5G speeds and unlimited data, talk, and text, they're the wireless service for those who live life in the fast lane. Whether you're tracking lap times or sharing your latest victory with fellow Porsche fans, Charlie Mobile has you covered with 0 hidden fees or contracts. Plus, they're proud to give back, donating to causes that matter both locally and beyond. Ready to join a wireless service that goes the extra mile? Switch to Charlie Mobile and experience the difference on and off the track. I do believe we've got our winner ready to talk to us. Robbie Prescott looked like he had good control of this field for much of the race. So let's have a little chat with Robbie to see how he feels about how it went. Robbie, it looked like both the speed and practice and qualifying and the race itself kind of did the work for you. Is that a fair assessment?
And actually working a lot more, so been busy focused on that. But I think I love technical and short tracks, and I like to consider myself someone who can stay focused pretty easily. So I think the combination of just trying to stay focused for an hour and on a short track like this kind of worked in my favor.
Well, if it's relatively recent, congratulations on graduating. What did you study?
Oh boy, sports management, and I got a master's degree in sports administration. So sports are my life, and I work in the running industry, so love me some running shoes.
Well, all around racing seems to be your bailiwick here. The good news is our points leader did not have a good day, so this helps you out coming from 6th in the championship. Where do you look at from here in terms of the points fight?
I think it's going to come down to the last race. I don't know if you guys showed the points before this race, but 1 through 6, we're all pretty in a tight pack, especially that. I think it's 4, 5, 6. We're all like a couple points separated. So I knew Jesse wasn't going to be here tonight, obviously being teammates with him on Solpec. He's working tonight, so I wanted to get a win for the both of us. And then I had no idea Polasek was not going to grid up. So that kind of made my life a little easier, knowing that he's super quick and not there, so I could just try to see if I could run away.
Well, again, congratulations on the victory today, and we look forward to seeing you later on.
Thank you, boys. It was a fun one. So shout out Solpec, the new team I'm on, and our sponsors are Bruzy as well. So gotta love those boys.
It was Robbie Prescott, your victor, who was followed up by Bryce Rodriguez. I think we've got Ewan O'Leary hooked up talking to him.
Yes, welcome in, Bryce. Good to have you with us, and congratulations on finishing at second place for the 3rd round in a row. Are you pleased to be so consistent, or are you disappointed that you haven't been able to win one of these last 3?
A bit of both. Happy to be consistent at the top, but of course it's a bit frustrating when, finishing second consistently, but, just doing the best I can, and hopefully that win will come soon.
Absolutely. I mean, you may not have to win the championship after all. It has been known. You'll be 9 points ahead of Derek Cyphers at the end of this, just 12 ahead of Robbie Prescott, and not very many more ahead of Logan Grado as well, in a really tight fight, even with Michael Polsic dropping away now. How are you feeling about that and the rest of the season with so many top drivers towards the front and seemingly on such similar speed?
Well, the drivers in the top 5 or even this whole kind of league are super quick, but just taking it, lap by lap, corner by corner. And right now I'm just focusing on the next race. So just take it race by race and just see what happens.
Speaking of the next race, any opinions on Bathurst to offer us?
Fun, scary, and just fun and scary.
I think that's a good 2 words to use. Congratulations on finishing second tonight, Bryce, and we'll see you at Bathurst.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bryce Rodriguez. Second place. I think that's the 2 words that sum up Bathurst best, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got one more to chat with. Very much want to hear from Derek Cyphers, who finished in 3rd today. Derek, congratulations. Your last name, Cyphers, sometimes means a freestyle circle, but it seems like you let nobody in the circle and refused to pass the mic today. That was impressive.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. That was a really tough race, just tons of pressure. Everybody was really closely matched, and I just felt lucky to hang on there at the end.
Now, talk about Logan catching up to you, because we noticed he seemed to lack pace early on, but then suddenly on the latter half, he was very much on a charge and a threat. Were the tires something the drivers had to look out for, or do you think it's something else that allowed him to catch you?
I was definitely trying to manage the tires. I think the Cup car, if the fronts get below about 40%, it starts to get sketchy, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't end up in that spot. But overall, he was just willing to brake a lot later into turn 1 than I was. I was just trying to drive safe and consistent. I'm in the running with the points right now, so a big mistake is just the one thing I need to avoid.
Well, with this being such a short track, what was it like otherwise outside of your car? Did you feel like the traffic was pretty good? We saw a lot of very gentlemanly moves by the lap traffic.
Yeah, everybody was great. I think Jonathan let us by on the straight earlier than I really expected him to. He probably could have been fine all the way to the end of the race, but it was great all the way through. Didn't really have that much lap traffic. I think that's a testament to everybody driving really well. We're not in the wet anymore, so we didn't have as many cars that had offs and that kind of thing. So overall, the total grid was just really good.
Again, we were mighty impressed up here with your defense today. Congratulations on a podium.
Thanks very much, Joe.
That was Derek Cyphers, P3, with a whole lot of drivers breathing down his neck at the end. Before we go, we want to mention Charlie Mobile one more time, because they're your ticket to staying connected at full throttle. With lightning fast 5G speeds and unlimited data, talk, and text, they're the wireless service for those who live life in the fast lane. Whether you're tracking lap times or sharing your latest victory with fellow Porsche fans, Charlie Mobile has you covered with 0 hidden fees or contracts. Plus, they're proud to give back, donating to causes that matter both locally and beyond. Ready to join a wireless service that goes the extra mile? Switch to Charlie Mobile and experience the difference on and off the track. Join us next tomorrow night. We'll be back October 17th for the club class here at Summit Point. And a big thank you goes to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as our team, Ewan and Ramiro. And thank you for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak. Race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.